Now, this probably isn't going to come as a shock to most of you, but I'm not the world's most practical man. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law, however, are. In fact, they've just sold a house that they spent years converting. They bought an old house and converted it and did loads of stuff to it, and they've just sold it. And they're about to buy another one, another project. Now, that's not really me, to be honest with you, but I do understand one thing. I have watched enough episodes of Grand Designs to understand that unless you start off with a solid foundation, then whatever you build on top of that isn't going to work. You need to get the foundations right first before you start to move on from there. Which is exactly what Polestar have been doing, because the two that they brought out a few years back now has been their solid foundation, onto which they can now start to build upon. We've already seen the 3, and now there's this, the new Polestar 4. So without further ado, welcome to this week's road test review, welcome to the new Polestar 4, and as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, let's clear up one thing, Polestar's naming policy. The 4 isn't the biggest car, it's the 4th product that the company's launched. And you might wonder what the 1 was about, because the 1 was actually a very limited production car. It was the big sort of like super GT hybrid coupe. It was the car that they launched to sort of establish the brand and to show it as a standalone manufacturer. But it was very expensive, it was a hybrid, and there wasn't a lot of them actually built. In fairness, they were very limited in production. It was the Polestar 2 that really set the company's stall out for all to see. And that was a car that really sort of like competed with cars, and still does in fairness, with cars such as the Tesla Model 2, and obviously BMW i4, Hyundai Ioniq 6, and so forth. It's their mid-size sort of sports saloon that's all electric. The next car that they launched was the 3, their large E-segment SUV to compete with the BMW iX and the Mercedes-Benz EQE and of course the Audi Q8 e-tron. This is the 4, and believe it or not, this is a D-segment SUV coupe. Well, that's what they tell us. It doesn't really look like that, but there's a reason for that, because what Polestar can do is they're starting with a clean sheet of paper. In all the sort of marketing and the press bump that they give us journalists and stuff, they use the word pure a lot, and that's basically sort of like saying we don't have sort of like a heritage, a legacy if you like, where we have to conform. We can pretty much start with a clean sheet of paper, which is exactly what the Polestar 4 does in more than one way. Now, we've done a sneak peek with this car in the studio, and if you have watched that, you'll know the controversial aspect of the Polestar 4 is the fact that it doesn't have a rear window. How practical is that? Well, obviously, we need to find out. And by doing so, it means we need to put it through the AutoEV road test. The AutoEV road test review is brought to you in kind partnership with Anderson EV, the home wall box charger that's designed and manufactured in the UK to bring the very best of aesthetics as well as technology to your home charging unit. With a cable that can be stored within the unit and a motion sensing light to help you see in the darker hours, the A2 and A3 home wall box chargers are built using aluminium and wood construction and can be configured in over 200 different ways to suit your home, and come with the benefit of the Anderson app, which helps you schedule charging to take advantage of low cost nighttime rates. All of this also comes with a peace of mind of a 7-year warranty with every unit. We're proud that the AutoEV road test is brought to you in partnership with Anderson EV, the home charger that's designed for people who love their home as much as their cars. Before we crack on with the review, let's take a little snapshot of where the Polestar 4 actually sits. Well, the new Polestar 4 is a D-segment SUV coupe that confusingly slots between the Polestar 2 saloon and the Polestar 3 E-segment SUV. It comes in one battery size with a usable 94 kilowatt-hour capacity that should see up to 385 miles delivered on the WLTP cycle. You have a choice of either a single motor car with 268 brake horsepower or a dual motor car with 536 brake horsepower, making that the most powerful production Polestar to date. And prices start from £59,990 for the single motor car, rising to £66,990 for the dual motor car before any options are fitted. Now, if you're a little bit like me, the whole SUV thing might throw you a little bit of curveball there, because it doesn't really look like a traditional SUV style of car. But like I said at the beginning, Polestar don't really conform to type. Coupe? I can see that. SUV? How are we going to find out whether or not it does live up to that tag, or whether it's all just hype? Well, of course, we have to put it through the road test review that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric car. And that is the AutoEV one. Now, as always, we're going to start with styling, which I think is a very, very strong point when it comes to Polestar. Now, one thing that, as I say, they keep talking about is this pure. They keep using the word pure in their language, and that is because they say they're not really a legacy manufacturer that has to incorporate certain elements within their designs. They can really start with a clean sheet. Now, there are elements of the cars that they do share, and we'll go around them. We'll go around the car and kind of point those out to you that you'll see on the other Polestar products. But they don't have things like the BMW double kidney grille, or the four rings of Audi, or the Mercedes three-pointed star, or anything like that they must incorporate in. They can pretty much draw the car exactly how they want it to be. And what I like about them is, as they've evolved from the Polestar 2 up to the Polestar 4, there's elements, as I say, that are shared, but they are unique in each individual model. Kia are very good at doing that. Hyundai with the Ioniq series, that's the same. They call it their chess pieces. In other words, they're part of the same team, but they're their own individual member, if that makes sense. And that's pretty much what you see with Polestar. A little caveat, by the way, if you see a little white dog in shot, that's my dog Finley. He's with me today, so I'm sorry about that. Right, the first things first. When we first saw the Polestar 2, you had your Thor hammer headlights, which was a little bit of a legacy that was obviously from Volvo. But as Polestar have evolved with their own styling departments and things, you can see those change now. It's now a dual blade headlight here, and what you have here is this lower section here that's the actual headlight, and this upper section here which is the daytime running lights and auxiliary lamps. These are matrix LEDs down at the bottom, the pixelated LEDs, and they're designed obviously so that they don't dazzle oncoming road users when you're driving at night, and they are exceptionally good at night, certainly, but it gives the car a very kind of distinctive face. Now, as I say, SUV, as soon as you hear that, you do tend to think of a really big, high, tall car, and that's where the first thing about the Polestar 4 really throws you. It's actually quite low at the front, but again, it's a bespoke platform, it's a bespoke EV platform, and because they don't have to incorporate heritage sort of design cues in, they can really lower that frontal aspect right down. Now, whilst it doesn't have that kind of aero blade that the Polestar 3 has to direct airflow, aerodynamics is a huge part of the car, and making the car slip through the air really, really cleanly is going to help with its efficiency. There's obviously cooling down at the bottom here, where obviously airflow goes in and helps cool the battery, but otherwise it is a real kind of sports car looking nose to it. You get your Polestar badge here, which as always is this lovely kind of, it's always finished in a matte finished body colour like the rest of it, but with the 4 it now has illumination around its outline, which is lovely at night. It looks really, really prestigious and luxurious. So rather than it shining actually through the badge, which I think would make it look quite cheap, what Polestar have done is they've made the illumination around the actual badge itself to give it the outline, and it makes it really stand out, and I do like that. Now, the lower cladding here, you'll see more of it as we go around the side of the vehicle, but you can have that either in contrasting sort of like black as standard, or you can option it with body colour. Now, I'll put some B-roll up of a car that's here with it in body colour. Personally speaking, I don't really like it with the body colour. It makes the side of the car look too tall. But as I say, we'll move around the side, and as we go around the car, I'll talk a bit more about what I think about that. But I think we're off to a really good start with the car. Now, as we move around the side of the car, that's where that kind of SUV tag, I think, is really thrown into question, because it doesn't look like your conventional SUV, even though it obviously is an SUV coupe, because it's not tall. You know, I'm only 5'8" and I can see well over the roof of this car, whereas SUVs, you think, well, they should be tall, high-riding vehicles. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Right, so 20-inch wheels come as standard, but you can option up to 21s. If you go for the 20-inch wheels, then they come with Pirelli P0 tyres on 50 profiles, but if you move up to the 21s, what you move on to is the Michelin Pilot Sport tyres, EV-based tyres as well. Lovely kind of aerodynamic alloy wheels, obviously depending on the model that you go for. Now, there will be a performance pack available as well, which is a completely different style of alloy wheel as well. This is the bit I was talking about down here. Now this particular colour is called Thunder, this kind of grey colour, and this is a single motor car. So it's maybe a little bit difficult to see the kind of black here, but on a white car you can really see the difference with it, where this would, and as I say, if you have it all one colour, it makes the whole side of it, I think, really tall. I like the contrast because look, where the body is kind of sculpted in here and it really scalloped in there, and it just pinches the bodywork in, it makes it feel really sleek and low down to the ground. Again, kind of eschewing that sort of SUV tag. There's a huge amount of safety on the car as well, and a lot of sort of modern technology. You get cameras on the side of the car getting ready for autonomy that unfortunately is going to be plaguing our roads very, very soon. But basically there's a load of cameras around the car, and that's when they are really quite neatly integrated into this sort of little blister that comes out there. And then there's more in the mirrors and things. Talking of the mirrors, of course, it's your usual lovely Polestar mirror with a kind of frameless glass that's round it. Gives you great visibility backwards on the car as well. Now look at this. Door handles, not dissimilar to you get on, say, something like, say, the Jaguar I-Pace, where they pull out, you know, they actually pop out of the doors. And that's completely different to sort of the big chunky door handles you get on the Polestar 2, and again different to the Polestar 3's ones that are flush, that just pivot out. So Polestar are really pushing this design thing. So rather than being cheap about it and just saying, oh, we'll just fit the door handles that we do in the Polestar 2, they develop a completely new different door handle for each model. And it's that attention to detail that I think stands Polestar apart from all its competitors, that they're not willing to compromise on design for each individual models based on cost. When you open the door, you notice there that it doesn't quite go right round the whole sill, but it does go quite far down in fairness. But it does open up, and it is frameless, and it does allow a really load of access in here. There's a huge amount of space to get in and out of the car. So that is excellent, I have to say. Obviously, it's a frameless glass front and rear. They're going to do away with those horrible little plastic keys you used to get the Polestar, and I think they're adopting the sort of like the Tesla model with a sort of like a key card, or eventually it'll be on your phone as well. So they are moving ahead with that. This is the bit here that they're really at pains to point out why they've done away with this rear window. This roofline and the sort of the rear structure, it's way behind the rear passengers' heads, and by doing that it increases the amount of interior space that you get in the car. So as I say, the actual roof of the car comes way back to halfway down the rear pillar. That's where the roof stops, and then it flows on from there. So that's the coupe element really taken care of. But it's a really distinctive looking car. It doesn't look like anything else on the road. And as I say, it doesn't look like anything else that Polestar have done. It does share a lot of commonality, especially around the front, with the new Polestar 5 that's coming out, that we saw as the Precept concept, and the Polestar 6, which was originally shown as the O2 Roadster concept with those dual blade headlights. But again, it's its own individual model and its own sort of like individual sort of like personality within the Polestar range. And I like that. Now, as we move around the back, that's where you can really see the big controversial aspect of the car, which is the lack of rear window. So how do you see out the back of the car? Well, of course, it's done via cameras, and that's the camera that's mounted up in there. And the field of vision that this camera gives you is way bigger than you would get from a conventional mirror, or also just from looking over your shoulder around the back. It takes a bit of getting used to, that's what I will say, but having driven the car, you know, over a good distance, I can say that it does work, but I get it's going to maybe put you off the car at first, but you need to have a bit of an open mind. We'll go on to that later when we drive it. Right, okay, so what have we got around the back? Well, again, a kind of new sort of like interpretation of the Polestar light bar that goes back there. This lovely sort of like thin strip of light, then it just drops down at the side. And again, it's a sort of like a signature of Polestar, but again, on each individual car, it's kind of changed. So it's similar, but different. Nice high mounted button to release for the boot. So all the lights are up in here. That's where all your lights are on the car there. So there's nothing lower down at all. That's where they all are. But integrated there is your boot button as well. So it's not underneath here where it's going to get dirty and you get your hands dirty trying to release the boot. There is another camera here obviously for your reversing. So that's just a separate camera to the one that's up there. And again, like the front, you've got the body coloured Polestar star badge in matte finished body colour there. But this one doesn't light up, it's only the one at the front that does. There's some nice bits of aero work here just to help airflow around the car, and you've also got the addition of parking sensors as well. So it's not just relying on cameras, bear in mind, but there is a huge amount of sensors around the vehicle to help with safety and the general driving of the car. Right, what do we think? Well, as I say, it's going to be controversial, and a lot of people are going to immediately go, oh, I can't deal without the rear window. But trust me on this, you've got to get used to it. When you start driving the car, you soon start to realise that relying on that camera does actually give you a better rear view aspect than actually a rear window will. And the benefits of having it like that means that rear space for the rear passengers is completely freed up. But what do you think? Would it put you off? Are you willing to give it a try? As always, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Right. Now, 526 litres of boot space. You can see it's a hatchback, it's a proper hatchback. And what's also very nice is because this is a carpeted area here, you've got the Polestar logo embedded, embossed into this carpet area here. So that is quite nice. But that's 526 litres of boot space, and it feels huge. It certainly looks it. 31 litres of that, however, are actually under the boot floor. And you've also got a movable boot floor, so you can raise and lower it depending obviously on what you want. And as I say, there's a big trunk of underfloor storage in here. So even if I take something like my camera bag, just close the zip on that. I don't have my suitcases, unfortunately, because I'm not viewing the car elsewhere today, but I can actually drop my camera bag under that boot floor. So that's quite practical, in fairness. You can get a whole big rucksack underneath there as well. So that is very good. Now, believe it or not, you can actually split fold the rear seats as well, because this section here, which is effectively where the rear window would be, that comes out and you've got a 60-40 split. And if you fold all of that down, then that takes total capacity up to 1,536 litres of boot space. So it is a practical car. Now, there's a very small amount of under bonnet storage in the car as well, but it's not sort of like Tesla rivaling in that sense. But it would certainly be enough for, I don't know, maybe a folded up coat, or if you're taking the dog for a walk or something, some muddy leads or something like that, or if you're travelling abroad, you can put your your high-vis jackets and your spare ball kit and things like that in there, so you don't have to get them out of the back if you do need them. So it's better to have it than not, I would suggest. Now, this is the part where that rear window, or lack of, comes into play, and that's the reason, is to free up the interior space in the back of the car. So I'm going to try and demonstrate the best way I can, so bear with me here. Now, in terms of size, the car is around about just under 5 metres long, and you've got a 3 metre long wheelbase on the car, and that is very much evident when you get in the back of it, because I'll say, by pushing the wheels or the axles right out to the extremities of the car, it means that what you then have is a large amount of interior space to play with in terms of front to back space. But what Polestar wanted to do was also concentrate on this space as well, because normally in a car, your structure, if I sit here, the roof structure will be about here, just right above my head. Well, right above my head in the Polestar 4 is the panoramic roof, and it's got another just under foot to go before that structure starts behind my head. So by moving that back, what you're doing is you're increasing the amount of interior space that there is in the back of the car, and that's quite key, especially with a car that they market as a coupe. Bear in mind, coupes were always the least practical car in the range. So to make it more practical and make it feel more spacious, it can only be a good thing, can't it? So as I say, they've pushed the structure behind sort of like the rear seats here, and as I say, there's no kind of rear window at all. There's a little bit of space behind here where that sort of like rear parcel shelf, for want of a better word, used to sit, and it has some ambient lighting that goes round the car. Now, I'll talk about that more when we go into the front, but basically what you have is this material here, which is a tailored knit material where the lighting kind of shines through it almost, and then underneath it, and it floods the cabin with a kind of ambience which is just beautiful. So again, it's going to add into the luxury side of things by doing that. Look at the space that I've got for my legs. That's my drive position at 5'8". That's bags of room. The floor does feel a little bit pushed up, that's all I will say, but it is a bespoke EV platform, so the battery is mounted underneath the car. But in terms of rear accommodation, this feels every bit as big as the Audi SQ8 e-tron that I drove here in, for rear accommodation, and that's a big car in the back. That's got loads of space in the back of it, but there feels as much lounging space in the back of the Polestar 4 as there does in that. There's two sculpted rear seats. You could get a third person in here. There is a seat belt for them. However, what I will say is the seat itself isn't really that flat here in the middle, and the legs are going to be sort of like excuse me, they're going to have this interruption here, which is the rear climate control system, and also the infotainment control. You can control the radio system and the MP3 player from back here as well. And there's another kind of little settings menu, so you can just change the intensity of the display. You can set timers and such like from there as well, and control things like heated rear seat. That's all controlled from here too, so that's good. Talking of the rear seats, if I fold down this centre armrest, this is its party trick. You see there's two little buttons there. The rear seat reclines, so you can actually really properly recline back here. And of course with these kind of padded head restraints and then no structure above you, you're looking straight up through the glass, it feels lovely. It really does. I see why they've done it. It just makes sense for the rear passengers. It just feels like there's so much space back here. There's a tiny little bit of storage. There's a little rubber mat here. I don't think it's a wireless charger, it's just a mat for like putting your phone on. There is, I promise you, there is two cup holders in here, but I think this is a pre-production car. This one was being a little bit recalcitrant with me earlier. But yeah, there's two cup holders that pop out here. There you go. So you can put your bottle of water in there, your cups in there for you, and also as well there's door bins which have got rubber linings on the bottom, which is good, and carpets on the side of them, so I do applaud you for that, Polestar. Isofix points, they're really easy to get to. They're just kind of behind these little kind of plastic covers here, so for putting rear child seats in, and as I say, the door opens a reasonable amount. It's not the best, it doesn't open as wide as it maybe should be able to in some respects, but it's not bad, and you'll still be able to get the child seats in and out with relative ease. And there's some mat pockets on the backs of the front seats as well, so that is good. I do want to talk a bit about the sustainability, as I mostly do on these things now. Now, Polestar have got a huge focus on sustainability. They're one of the companies that, in fact, it's why we gave them an award last year. They got the AutoEV Innovation Award of 2023 in our awards category because of what they're doing. They're using the amount of recycled materials that they use in a car is huge, and then therefore the amount that can be then recycled is massive. They are trying to drive down the sort of like the CO2e, which is the sort of like the whole scale sort of like CO2, or the production of the car, if you like. Now on the floor here, for instance, what we have here is what's called monomaterials. Now the carpets are 100% PET recycled, so it's like old fishing nets and things like that. But the monomaterial, what that basically is this part on the door here, this tailored knit system. It's not component after component after component laid on top of each other. It's designed to be manufactured like this, and then that one bit fitted over the top of it, which not only makes it much easier and use less materials to construct, but then when it comes to the actual recycling of the car, there's less of it to sort of like recycle, if that makes sense. There's less different materials that need to be separated out to be recycled. So that's the sort of level of detail that Polestar go into, and I think that's really important for car manufacturers to look at. As I say, the Audi SQ8 that I've been driving this week, Audi don't talk at all about sustainability, and I think that's a really poor from a company like Audi, whereas you do get people like BMW, Polestar obviously, Volvo's another one, some of the Stellantis group cars, Fiat, even the little Fiat 500, they talk about the material they use, the sequel material being made from recycled fishing nets, and trying to sort of like, we know that younger buyers want to talk about sustainability and connectivity, so it's a really key thing. And Polestar are really leading the way with it. The overall CO2 that it now takes Polestar to make one of these is tons below what it used to be to make the Polestar 2 when it first came out, and they've managed to reduce that car's CO2e by something like about 4 tons, which is an incredible amount. So hats off to you, Polestar, you're doing an incredible job. So to be able to do that with all these new sustainable materials, and still make the car feel luxurious and special inside, I think has to be commended. And I think in terms of its rear accommodation, this is a class winner. Now we move up the front, you've got a real different sort of like interior, even to Polestar, because what they've done is, rather than the portrait screen that we've been used to with them, they've flipped it around to the landscape, and it's a 15.4 inch screen that pretty much controls everything. Now that's a good and a bad thing, and we'll go on to talk about that in a second. But basically what you have here is an Android automotive system, so in other words, Google. It's a Google operating system that we've been used to, which is superb. So the sat nav is spun from Google Maps. And you can see here that basically the screen is split into two things. So you've got map on the left hand side here, and then I've got 4 widgets around here. And you can change these depending what you want quick access to. So whilst yes, a lot of things are buried in the screen, you can set it up so the ones you use the most often are the ones that are up here. So for instance, favourite shortcuts, you need to adjust steering wheel mirrors and such like, you can press that, and then all of a sudden now we've got the ability to move the left and the right mirror here, or the steering column as well. We can move that by using the steering wheel controls, which are here, by pressing the button on here. Same with head-up display and such like. Okay, so those widgets you can program depending obviously on what you want. This one here is, then you've also got your kind of media control up here, your telephone, and then this ambience, which is, I think, really quite nice. They've done something different. They've basically used the planets to control, to sort of signify the interior ambient lighting. So for instance, the kind of blue that we've got in this car at the moment is Earth, and it tells you a little bit of the sort of the details of that planet as well. Just a bit of fun, which is quite nice. And then obviously you can go to Mars, he says, hang on, there we go, which is, gives it a more kind of reddish glow. And then obviously depending on what you want. No prizes for guessing that as soon as your kids get in the car, they're going to go straight and change it to Uranus. But that's kids for you, what can you do? So that's quite nice. Again, it's a bit different. As I said, in the back, it floods the kind of cabin with this kind of soft glow light, which I really do like. I think it looks lovely. There's a real concentration on sustainability, as you'd expect from Polestar. And like the back, they use a thing called a mono material. So in other words, there's not a lot of components into making things up. So normally like door cards, you'd have a door card, foam density, things. It's all trimmed to fit, because if it's easier to manufacture, then it's easy to recycle and you don't have to use as much materials. So that's the kind of thing that I like about Polestar. They drill down to those little details of making things easy to work, but for the right reasons. Not for cost cutting, but for sustainability reasons, and nice design, I have to say. The materials themselves feel lovely. You've got this kind of neoprene up on top of the dashboard here, and then this car actually has the Napa leather fitted to it. But interestingly, although it's Napa leather, what Polestar do as well is they've worked with Bridge of Weir leather, and they talk a lot about animal welfare. So they've worked with Bridge of Weir, the leather company, to ensure that the cattle that sort of like the leather comes from has been looked after properly, and their welfare is considered. So that's what I do like about it. They're going into those sort of details on this car. I think it has to be applauded. Anyway, back to this screen, because I say it's not all perfect in fairness, because you'll notice there is literally a lack of physical buttons, save for this one here, which is the volume control and the play and pause button that we've been used to with Polestar. That itself has a lovely feel. It feels like you're turning the kind of, the bezel on a diver's watch as you're kind of turning that, so the volume down. So that does have a lovely feel to it. But that is it when it comes to physical buttons. Even moving the vents, for the airflow, you've got to go into the screen to do that. So if I go into, where is it here? Here we go. A bit like Tesla. So the vent itself is integrated into the dashboard, and then you've got to move it on the screen to get the airflow going to where you want it. Which okay, fair enough, I get it from the design point of view, but I quite like it just to be able to move it with just little things. If it's in your face, you're blowing in your face, you need to turn it down or turn it away from you. Like I've got the dog in the car at the moment. If he gets it too much in his face, should be able to just turn it off rather than going into a screen to do it. That's my only downside with this type of system. But we are finding Polestar aren't alone. Most manufacturers are doing this now. Very few are. They're doing away with a lot of physical buttons, and it's not a good way, especially when it comes to safety systems, because like a lot of the cars I've been driving of late, you've got this driver attention warning system here that monitors your eye movement. So if you're spending too much time doing this, it lets you know. Well, if you're going to chastise me for doing that, why do you put so much in there? That doesn't make sense to me. Right. Let's go back to the screen a second, because what I want to do is, here we go, show you all your kind of widgets here. So you can go in here, and obviously you're not going to use this all the time. You're not going to be constantly flicking through the screen. So once you've set things up, that's it. But basically what Polestar do is they design everything on a grid pattern. And that's the one thing I do like about them. And the other thing that I like about them is they go down to things like, they say the font they use, it's always the same font and it only comes in 4 sizes. So the clarity of it from a design point of view, from a driver passenger point of view when you're using it, it's very easy to read, very easy to see, and very easy to understand what you're doing when the screen is there. So by using the screen, it's very easy to see it. You get things like Apple CarPlay, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Obviously you've got Spotify and inbuilt Spotify. Google Maps, as I say, is the inbuilt navigation system, and there'll be downloadable apps that you're going to be able to get, you know, as the car progresses. Over there updates for things like, it's got YouTube, but you know, Netflix, or you know, streaming services, you know, which you can use while the car is charging, that type of thing. So that is exceptionally good to see. This is what I'm talking about here. So if I go back to the car settings, where is it? Let's go into the drive setting and let's use the assist one here. So you see what I mean? You've got 6 widgets there. And basically, if it's orange, it means it's on. So your driver alert on, your lane keeping aid is on, the blind spot information, that's switched off. But if I want to switch it on, you know, I just press it and it lights up orange, and that means that that is now on. So that's what I mean. It's easy to see at a glance what's on and off. You're not having to spend a load of time doing it. And you'll also notice the 3 little dots here. If I press those 3 little dots, it gives me an animation there and explains what that function actually is. So, you know, that's quite good. I like that, the fact that it can do that. But as I say, it's maybe just not brilliant that everything is so dependent on the screen. But there we go. As I say, it's not just Polestar, in fairness to them. There's a second screen, a 10-inch screen, which is in front of the driver here. And obviously, depending on where the car is actually started. Let me start the car up. Now, it's a bright day, you'll not see it from back there. But basically what I now have is a very minimal kind of thing here. So I've got the speed here, I've got functionality down the side here, I've got state of charge and range on this side, and then obviously my transmission here. So a very kind of minimal look to that. If I want to change that, it's just a button on the steering wheel. Now I can throw the map up onto there, so I can have my navigation directly in front of me. You've also got a head-up display as well in the car, which you can adjust, which you can in most cars in fairness, adjust the amount of information it gives you up there, so that's quite good as well. So, you know, it is trying to keep your eyes on the road, in fairness to it. But as I say, it'd just be nice to have a few extra little buttons and things down here to be able to do that. Anyway, there we go. So yeah, you can change the display in front of you. So you can go from minimal to map, and then to doing the same here as the car. You know, if it's got lane keep assist on, for instance, you've got your car kind of going there, and that's fine. Column stalks, you've got your transmission lever on the right hand side, and your indicators, lights and wipers on the left side. Like the Polestar 3, I've got a little bit of an issue with the kind of 4 buttons around here because they're not clearly defined. You've again got to go into the screen to use these to adjust. It'd be nice to be able to see them, you know, to have different kind of functionality on there to know what they actually do, rather than having to go into the screen to find out. That's my only kind of bugbear on the steering wheel. But the wheel itself is nice, it's a nice size, it's got a good kind of girth. You've got the kind of chrome marker at 12 o'clock there, and a slightly flat bottom round here. Wish I had a flat bottom. Just to sort of, you know, give you a bit extra leg space here. The seats, superb, as you come to expect. As I say, this one's got Napa leather in it, and it's got heated and ventilated seats. But even the car that has, you know, sort of like the material on the seats, which I must admit I kind of prefer, the material on the seats. It feels luxurious. It certainly feels very special. And as I say, it's that feeling of quality that you get in the car. Now, this is the mirror here that does away with the rear window. And you can actually just have it as a normal mirror. So if you want to see what the kids are up to, you just flick it there, or you flick it back, and it's the width of vision that you get right across the screen. It's not distorted, it's not like a wide angled lens or a fisheye or anything like that. It's very, very clear, and it's got such a breadth of vision out the back of the car. I can't fault it at all. It's very good, and as I say, it does take a bit of getting used to, but once you do, trust me, it's very good. It does also mean you can carry 3 people in the back and still see what's behind you. So again, you know, there are benefits from it, so don't just dismiss it as being a silly gimmick, because there are a lot of benefits to be had with it. But as I say, if you want to just see what the kids are up to, you just flick that and it goes back to being a mirror, and then you can see them making faces at you from behind. So, the interior, what do we think? Well, first things first, the lack of buttons and the reliance on the screen is continuously being a bugbear, you know, for us drivers. You know, there is no doubt about that, especially, as I say, when they chastise you with safety systems for taking your attention off the road. So why bury it in a screen? But if you are going to do that, then I'd suggest the Polestar screen is one of the better ones to use, because of the clarity, because of the way it's laid out, because of the amount of attention to detail they put into it. Where everything is, the way it's designed, as I say, the font size, the clarity of the fonts, those little animations, the fact that it's quite simple. You know, when you go into, where is it here? Sorry, I'm just going to try and go into this one here. Going to drive. So if it's your steering feel, you know, light, standard, firm, one pedal driving, off, low, standard. So there's not infinitely adjustable things. So as I say, once you kind of set things up, you probably won't go into it too much. But it just would be nice maybe to have things like, you know, being able to move the vents and stuff on buttons, or you know, or manually be able to do it rather than have to rely on the screen. That's the only thing. And it'd be nice to see these a bit more defined as to what these functionalities actually are. However, in terms of the materials used, a good message of sustainability, which we've come to expect from Polestar. The feeling of quality is immense. Everything is so well built, it feels it's going to last a million years. There's good storage. You know, you've got 2 cup holders here. I've got a bin in there, 2 USB connection ports there, wireless charging. We've got a cover that goes over the cup holders here, and you've got this additional space underneath here that obviously you can throw sunglasses into and iPads and stuff. Deep door bins, great. And then the feeling of luxury with that kind of nice ambient lighting that shines through, actually shines through the material, as I said, in the back, you know, to give you a nice kind of warm glow in the front. That just feels special. And that, I think, is key with the Polestar. So as I say, whilst it's not perfect, it's certainly one of the best ones in its class. Now, the Polestar 4 comes with just one battery size. It has a usable capacity of 94 kilowatt hours, giving up to 360 miles in the dual motor car and a potential 385 miles in this single motor version. Charging speeds are 200 kilowatts for both cars, and a 10 to 80% charge should be achieved in around about 30 minutes. As well as that, an 11 kilowatt onboard charger is standard, and a 22 kilowatt one is going to be available later on. As well as that, the vehicle will also provide you with vehicle to load charging ability, so bi-directional charging. If you're charging up from a 7 kilowatt wall box, then you're going to be looking at around about 15 hours to go from flat to full. And if you're looking for a home charging unit, then why not look at Anderson EV? The wall box is designed and manufactured in the UK to bring the very best of aesthetics as well as technology to your home charging unit. With a cable that's stored within the unit itself and a motion sensing light to help you see in the darker hours, the Anderson home wall box units use aluminium and wood in their construction. And they can be configured in over 200 different ways to suit your home, and come with the benefit of the Anderson app to help you schedule charging to take advantage of low-cost nighttime rates. And all of this comes with a peace of mind with a 7-year warranty as standard. We're proud that the AutoEV road test is brought to you in partnership with Anderson EV. Right, so as I said before, this is a single motor car that I've got here, which means it doesn't have the performance pack. You can't have the performance pack in the single motor car. But do you know what? I'm not sure you need it. Now, I did drive the Polestar 4 before, when I was in Spain driving the Polestar 3. And it's odd, because they've obviously done, they were pre-production cars. I mean, this is still a slightly pre-production car, but the steering calibration didn't feel quite right to me on those cars. But in fairness, we weren't judging it out there. I wasn't reviewing the car as such. It was to give me an initial taste of the car. And I just felt the steering wasn't quite there. I just felt there was something just lacking in the chassis of the car. But now that we've got a car, albeit a left-hand drive, still pre-production car back in the UK, I have to admit, you can really feel the difference in this car. This is, beyond question, a really good car to drive. Now Polestar say this is sort of like they're trying to say this is the sportiest car today. If you go for the dual motor car, it's certainly its most powerful production car that it's done, because the dual motor car is 536 brake horsepower. It does 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. This is the single motor car, which is 268 horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds. And I have to admit, I quite like this one. This one feels really good. It's, sorry, that beeping, by the way, is the speed limit warning, because it's a left-hand drive and it's all in kilometres. I'm trying to judge it so that I'm not breaking the speed limit going through these little kind of Oxfordshire villages. But I really like this car. There's a sort of like a chassis stiffness with this one that I really like. You feel that you can really lean on it in the corners and it feels like it responds really well. The only thing I would say in terms of driving it, there's a tiny bit too much wind noise coming from these frameless doors. That's the only fault that I can really pick up. Now, whether that again is something that can be adjusted for the production cars, I'm not entirely sure. But that's the only thing I will say is, in terms of refinement, road noise, tire noise, all the rest of it, absolutely fine. Just a tiny little bit of wind noise coming through on these frameless doors. So that's it. But actually, I quite like this car. I quite like this single motor one. Now, it's going to take a little bit more time with both of the cars, in finished form on the UK, for me to give a real kind of definitive, yes, it's a class 1 and no, it's not type of verdict. But based on what I'm driving today, and based on the fact that it does feel different to the car that I drove a month ago, I have to say Polestar have done exceptionally well with this car. It feels tight, and tight in a good way. I'm comparing it to, say, my BMW iX2. Okay, a different class of car, but that's an M Sport dual motor car with over 300 horsepower. So in some respects, it's not far off what this car is. So it's quite a nice comparison between the two. And I do like my iX2, I really do. But it doesn't have the fluency of this car. And that's a dual motor car. This is a single motor car, and it's got sort of like 40 horsepower less than the BMW. But the way you can string some bends together, it doesn't feel like it's that less powerful. This is good. This is really good. Now, you can change various different little bits and pieces. If I go into the screen here, obviously, I can change the standard steering feel. So at the moment, what I've got is the steering feel is in standard, but I can change it so that it's in either light or firm mode. I'm just going to keep it in standard for the moment. You can also adjust the brake regen as well, obviously depending what you want. So let me just get through this junction first. So again, at the moment I've got it in low, but you can have it either in off or standard. Then standard obviously is much higher. So if you flick it to standard, come off the pedal, yeah, there you go, it's bringing the car up to a halt. So there we are. So in fact, actually, let's take it off. Keep the steering in standard mode. Electronic stability is in on, it's not in sport mode, creeps off. So yeah, so the dual motor car gets adaptive dampers, which is the only thing that makes me wonder whether or not the ride quality is going to be much different to this car. This is on the sportier side of firm. It doesn't float over bumps. You can feel what's happening underneath the car, but it's not uncomfortable. It is just, I would say it's just on the firm side of right for me, if that makes at all sense. It just feels there's enough happening that I can feel what's going on underneath the car. And there's enough wheel movement in it where it doesn't feel floaty. It doesn't, you don't get a huge amount of wheel travel as you hit some of these bigger undulations. It stays nice and flat. The body control through some of the bends is very good indeed. But the big change for me is this steering. I have to say the steering is much, much better than the first car that I drove. And it just gives me a bit more confidence coming into these bends that I know what the wheels are doing. The brakes, I have to say, the actual pedal feel from the brakes is one of the best that I've felt on a car. Certainly from an EV, because you genuinely, it's got, now everyone's going to be different, I do appreciate that, but what I like about this is it's got a heaviness to it, so it doesn't feel like, you know, there's a deadness that you're going through something and then all of a sudden it bites. It doesn't do that. It feels like you're making the car slow down, and it feels that it's constant on hydraulic brakes rather than any motor regen. So they've got that, they've judged that really well, and I like that. That's something I really do like. In fact, it's one of my favourite bits about the car, how the brakes feel, the brake pedal action itself. And in terms of the relationship from the accelerator to the brake pedal with my feet, that's really nice as well. There's not a massive step up onto the brakes. It's just a slight move across. So again, if you are in a bit of a kind of, you know, you're throwing the car down a bit of a kind of B road and you're, you know, coming on and off the brakes yourself rather than relying on the regen, you know, your transition from accelerator to brake is really good. It's a small movement, which is excellent. It's exactly what you want. The wheel feels lovely in my hand. It's just the right size. I do like that, but I thought that with the Polestar 3, in fairness. I like the steering wheel, I like the size of it in the Polestar 3, so that's good too. The performance is enough. I think the performance is pretty much there. I'm not sure I would want much more. As I say, I know obviously you can have more with the dual motor car, but I have to say I'm impressed with this car, this single motor one. I think this will be the big seller. Obviously, you know, I think it will be in terms of its price. It's obviously a little bit cheaper than the other car, but I do think this is an exceptionally good car. Now, let me talk about this lack of rear window, because when you experience this camera, I promise you, it is completely different to what you think it's going to be. You think, oh, there's no way I'm going to get on with this. It's going to be absolutely useless, you know, no rear window. I promise you. Of course, it will take getting used to, and I think there will be a reluctance from most people because it is something new. And maybe there's an element of me that sort of like says, you know, have they tried to reinvent the wheel? I don't think they have, because when you experience this, like the rear seat accommodation and how different that is and how much more space there is inside, that's the difference, and I think that makes a world of difference. So that is something that, yes, it will take you a bit of time to get used to, but I think it's well worth getting used to. The only thing that I'm going to mark it down from, again, they can be turned off, but is these overzealous safety things. You know, it keeps coming up telling me I'm not paying attention, I need to take a, you know, but it's because I've got stuff in the screen, I need to use the screen, so my eyes are constantly coming off the road to use that. That's the only thing that I can really fault with this car now, is just that those safety systems being a bit overzealous. But this is an impressive car, really impressive. I'd like to spend a bit more time with it to really fully understand it, and it's a shame that I am not able to drive sort of like, you know, this car on the same route that I did, you know, on my first experience with the Polestar 4 over in Spain. I'm not sure that they'd want to take me out to Spain again to try it, but I have to say, this is excellent. This is an excellent car. Now, in terms of pricing, you're going to be looking at £59,990 for a single motor car like this before any options are fitted, and £66,990 for the dual motor car before any options are fitted. The performance pack, which obviously you can add on to the car if you want sort of like, you know, the sort of like the enhanced Brembo brakes and sort of like, you know, the different dampers and the tyres and the bigger wheels and things, that's only going to be available on the dual motor car when it goes on sale. But both cars come with the Plus pack as standard when UK deliveries start towards the end of 2024. So it's quite a unique looking car, and if we were to go along with what like Polestar say it's a coupe SUV, what competition are you going to be looking at? Well, if Polestar really don't list that many coupe SUVs as its main rivals, it talks about it being its main rival as being the new Porsche Macan, which obviously is a full-size SUV, but of course it's more performance-orientated style of all-electric SUV, and that's what it sees its main competition coming from, the Porsche Macan. As I say, remember, although it doesn't look like a traditional SUV in terms of its interior space and how they've designed the car, then you're getting the benefits of that SUV, that slightly raised driving position, that big interior space from a car that looks unlike anything else. So just bear in mind that when you're looking at maybe the competition of the car. They also list the Tesla Model Y, believe it or not, as a competitor for the car. I'm not really sure that it is, but fair enough, that's Polestar, that's what they want to say. I would be looking at things more like something, let's say, the Genesis GV60, you know, certainly sort of the Premium Plus model with all-wheel drive sport, you know, the high performance variant of that, going up against the dual motor version of this car. And of course, if you're looking at that, it'll be maybe things such as the Kia EV6 GT, maybe the Jaguar I-Pace. Well, it goes out of production this year, but again, I think that's a sort of similar style of car, doesn't really conform to a particular type, looks something very, very different. But as I say, that's going to be in its twilight year. But that could be a consideration if you're looking at this car. But yeah, it is quite different, and it's a very difficult car to pigeonhole this. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the new Polestar 4. Well, we like the company's new approach to its design language, both inside and out. It's very spacious on the interior, especially the rear accommodation. It's very dynamic. But more than that, it's the sustainability message and the company's commitment to reducing production waste that really impresses us. We don't like. Well, the lack of rear window, there's no doubt it does take some getting used to. There's a little bit too much reliance on the screen, and the lack of physical buttons is slightly distracting. And whilst it is well built and is a very premium product, it does get expensive with some options fitted. Sometimes it's difficult to fully appreciate a car in a few short hours. Some cars really ingrain themselves over you over a period of time, whereas others immediately you sort of bond with. It's a weird thing, but this job has taught me that over the last 30 years in dealing and appraising motor cars, that some just click with you. The SUV thing, the coupe SUV thing that Polestar call this car, I think is almost a little bit of a misnomer, because it doesn't feel anything like an SUV. And the one car that it reminds me of also doesn't feel like an SUV, despite its maker calling it that. And that's the Jaguar I-Pace. Now, if you're a regular viewer of AutoEV, you'll know how much I love the I-Pace and how high a regard that I hold that car in. I said it's Jaguar's best car since the original E-Type. It's a real line in the sand moment for Jaguar, the I-Pace. And I think the Polestar 4 could be a line in the sand moment for Polestar, because the foundations that they had with the 1 and the 2 and have built on with the 3, I think they've crowned it with the 4. This is a superb car. It's just like a big sport hatch. It's dynamic, it's full of tech, the tech for the right reasons, not just for the sake of having it. It has a strong message of sustainability, which makes it feel modern. The feeling of space and luxury inside is just off the chart. There's very little else I can say about it, other than the fact that it's absolutely 100% brilliant. Thank you for watching yet another episode of AutoEV. As always, please make sure that you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel, and then once you've done that, make sure you've pressed the little bell button that's down below, because that's the way that you get notified of when our next video is uploaded and it has gone live. If you have enjoyed this video, then make sure you press the like button down below, and of course, as always, don't forget, leave me your comments down below. What do you think of the new Polestar 4, especially that lack of rear window? I don't have an issue with it. Would you? Let me know your thoughts down below. Now remember, we're also across all social media platforms, so Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok even, so please do give us a follow there, because that does help us. And if maybe you're in the market for a new or a pre-owned electric vehicle and you want to know all the gory details about it, but wondering where do I find it all, you'll find it on the AutoEV YouTube channel. Because if it's been a new electric car in the UK market over the last 3 or 4 years, then we've subjected it to the road test that car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric vehicle, the AutoEV one. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching. Thank you for continuing to support the channel. I'll see you again soon.